This is not a test. This is episode 9 of the Necronama.com. And for the next 90 minutes or so, anything is legal. That means there's going to be cursing. There's going to be admissions of crimes that we would possibly commit. There's going to be Trump jokes. But most of all, there's going to be an analysis of the social commentary found in 4 Purge movies. So sit back and relax in your highly secured homes, listening to the chaos from afar, knowing that you are probably safe. Too bad no one else is. I am James Sabata, horror author, screenwriter, and I have survived every single purge that America's ever had.
And I'm Don Guillory, author, historian, co-host of this podcast, and probably the reason why James has survived every purge so far.
Don't trust him. He's just thinking of the times we play laser tag, and he saves me every time because all these little 6-year-olds keep shooting me. It's terrible.
Hey, melees work.
That's true. Speaking of melees working, did you know we're talking about the Purge today?
Yes, all 4 purges, not including the television series.
No, we're not doing the series today. Maybe one day, but not today.
At the panels that we've done where we discussed this, I often talk about the moment where I had a student when I was teaching high school came up to me and said, "Hey, Mr. G, there's going to be this great movie. I saw a trailer for it. It's a movie where all crime is legal." And I looked into the student's eyes and I said, "That's the stupidest idea I've ever heard in my life." And I said, "That makes no sense."
Right?
Do you realize there are ramifications if you have crime that's legal for 12 hours? What is the world going to look like after those 12 hours are up? Because...
And who's cleaning it?
For me, it didn't make sense. But it also didn't make sense because why would you cheer for crime to be legal? It doesn't mean that you're going to be immune from the effects of it.
Well, I mean, that's kind of the point of the first movie. Some of the people did think they were immune, but we'll get to that in a second. What I want to add to that always bothered me, and clearly they take care of this later, we'll talk about this in a bit, but when when the first movie called The Purge came out, I was instantly like, so everybody just resorts to murder? Because that's not what I would do at all. Sure, I'd murder somebody if I had to. But that's not the crime I would go for. I would be stacking my bank account so that come Monday, I'm making it rain everywhere.
I've got a few crimes in mind, but I'm not going to, incriminate myself with any stuff that could be revealed here if it happens in real life. But no, if in seriousness, if this were, as far as a real world situation, there's so many more things that would come to mind before murder. I mean, because in the first Purge movie that stars Ethan Hawke and Lena Headey, that's everybody's big concern is just, physical violence and murder. It's not something as simple as, you know what, I'm going to go down to the mall and go do my back to school shopping or back to school shoplifting.
It's true though. Wouldn't you go out and get as many pairs of Nikes as you can, or a new car, or so many other things? I guess the car might be hard to get home without it being damaged, but still, I don't know. Just resorting to murder is such an American thing, though, so maybe they really were onto something.
Well, I mean, you look at it this way. If crime is legal, because I didn't see anything with respect to ages as to whether or not you had to be a legal adult to participate. But think about all the 18 or even the 15 and 16-year-olds that would just go ahead and decide, if there's no law against this, these are technically not crimes. Think about all these kids that would just say, you know what, since underage drinking is not illegal at this moment, I'm going to go and, go get shit-faced.
The amount of rape would go skyrocketing.
Yeah, because, the 2 most violent things that I think about with respect to the Purge is sexual violence and physical violence.
Absolutely.
And you see that in each one of the films. There's always that threat of sexual violence, and I'm glad that at least the filmmakers don't go that far to have rape as part of the story. But you think about how fearful women would have to be during this period. And Dave Chappelle, on one of his previous stand-up specials, he made this comment about sexual violence towards women. And he was trying to explain to men, you got to understand how fearful women are on a daily basis of men. And he gives this analogy of the story about how he was doing stand-up at a strip club or for a drug dealer or something. And it was in a shady part of the neighborhood. It was late at night when he got out, and the guy paid him $10,000 in cash. And he put the cash in his backpack and walked the dark streets back home or to the subway or wherever he was going. And so he just continuously looked over his shoulders everywhere he went, looked around corners, was trying to hear anything that was going to indicate that somebody was going to attack him. And so all these guys are following him, and he stops. Instead of giving a punchline or getting to this crescendo of the joke, says, now, fellas, that's how women feel every day, because they've got something that somebody else wants, but they don't know if somebody's going to try and take it from them. And, that's the one thing I'm glad they don't get into with The Purge, because, one, that story or that exploitation of sexual trauma is one of those things that's kind of been overdone and hasn't been approached, I guess, in a sensitive way.
Yeah.
That would, deal with what the trauma would be like for these people. And then also you got to think about this. The violence that takes place, let's say, in a couple of movies, you saw these street fights that would take place. So it's people that are consenting to violence with each other. Then you have to factor in the people that are just going on these random attacks throughout the streets, beating people up, attacking homeless, setting fires, all that type of stuff. But the people that have those fights, similar to Fight Club, it's kind of like, when you're done, you're done. We're going to fight, we're going to go out in the streets, fight it out. And the next day, we might get along, we might be friends. But if I kill you or kill somebody that you're related to or you're friends with, I'm going to harbor some anger towards you until that next Purge night. So we're not going to be, people aren't going to be cool the day after Purge.
Well, that's one of my biggest problems with the entire concept of The Purge. The whole idea that, this night will be catharsis and it'll get it out of your system. That is not how it fucking works at all. And I fully understand that the new founding fathers aren't really believing that, but that's what they're selling. And
right.
It makes me nuts because I'm like, that's the opposite of how it works. Like, what it would do is give you that bloodlust. It would give you that revenge factor. It would give you all of this motivation to plan for next year and make it worse. And that's really feeding into what they're really doing, which is trying to wipe people out, certain people out.
Well, now that you bring that up, you got to question, at least in these films, there is this aspect of not just the haves and the have-nots, but the concept of us versus them, or the concept of the other. There are people that are less desirable as being considered worthy of being part of this society. And in the first Purge film, there's that discussion with not the frat boy, the prep, basically the Purge's version of Zach Morris, who shows up. But he shows up at the door, and he's got this blonde hair. He's got, this $1 million smile, this grin. I mean, aside from the mask that he's wearing, but he's got this $1 million smile and this composure about him to where I have every right to be here, and I'm going to be nice and polite. And I'll say, look, you are just like me. Open the door and let that guy, send that guy out here so we can purge. He's not like us. He's not worthy. Basically, this guy that escaped their violence, their attacks, makes it to your house for safety, and we need to deal with him. And we need to deal with him because he's not worthy of life. And just kind of that idea that people have in the Purge films of there are some people that are worthy of living and there are people that aren't. Before we get too far into that discussion, for those of you who haven't seen any of the Purge films, or especially the initial Purge movie, it features an African-American homeless, or we're assuming he's homeless veteran, who's escaped from the violence of this preppy squad that's hunting him down. And he escapes to the safety of Ethan Hawke's home because his son sees that the man's in danger and needs help, lets him into the home for refuge. And, these rich kids, or we're assuming they're rich kids because of the way they present themselves and even speak of themselves, are hunting him down and give the opinion, the perspective that man that's in that house is trash. He's undesirable. He's not welcome. And that they're doing society a favor by getting rid of him.
What I like about that juxtaposition is that they're viewing themselves as having every right to live while he has none, when he's clearly served and probably been somewhere where he had to legitimately survive that as well. And I would bet dollars to donuts that these fucks have never had to do anything like that.
Yeah, these films are, aside from, the gore and the violence and everything, they're a pretty good, funhouse mirror, or even a straightforward mirror on American society as far as how we want to think things are, but then we really don't come to terms with the way they are. I mean, if you think about homeless veterans, that's a big problem in the United States. Suicide with veterans, it's an average of around 22, 23 a day commit suicide.
Wow.
It's one of those things that even as a veteran, you have certain times when you feel as though you're being used as a pawn, at least in a political discussion or as part of government policy. And even, I think last week or a couple of weeks ago, there was a big discussion about, the border wall. Then when people realized that money was being taken away from military projects, military housing and infrastructure improvements on military bases in order to build a wall, people were upset, and people in the military were sitting there like, you guys keep doing this to us. Every time, something goes on, you want to wave the flag and bitch at, a football player for taking a knee. But then when it's time to actually do something about, veteran homelessness, veteran suicides, military pay conditions, not sending people to war arbitrarily, there are crickets. Yeah, and for those of you who are listening, I am a veteran, so I can say whatever the hell I want to right now. That's why you survived the purge, because I don't give a damn. But yeah, at least when you see this guy, and we had the pleasure of sitting down with Rebecca McKendry, who was working at Blumhouse at the time, and she said, that wasn't an intention as far as creating that character, because he comes back in the second movie, and he is in the third movie as well. And you kind of see he has this evolution of his character development where he starts fighting back against the new founding fathers of America. But the character itself is symbolic for many reasons. It has to deal with the racial aspect, has to deal with class, has to deal with the veteran community. You have all these aspects that talk about his invisibility, or at least the aspect of him being treated as though he doesn't have a space. I mean, one, he's homeless. He's not in the quote unquote right neighborhood. He's in the wrong neighborhood. There's so many examples of black men, especially, being stopped because they're too close to certain neighborhoods, or they're passing through neighborhoods, or they happen to be living in those neighborhoods, and they may be stopped by the police and told, or security in those areas, and be told be asked why they happen to be there. Having had this happen to me before, I take special exception to it. There's a great article. I can't remember who compiled it, but it's a piece called "Breathing While Black," and it chronicles celebrity, law enforcement, military, and political actors of color, and when they've had interactions with the police, and it's been simple things like they just happen to be driving too slow. These are things historically that had been done to people of color. We got the Zoot Suit riot where you had Mexican Americans that were being attacked. You had instances where Irish immigrants, Chinese immigrants, you have the Japanese internment camps. You have all these moments, at least in U.S. history, where people are deemed as unworthy, and violence is okay to commit against them because they're seen as the other. Bring those up to bring that comparison to the purge. And if you take the rules, you take these laws away, a lot of those protections that keep people from lashing out are now gone. So if you have any racial animosity, or if you have this feeling that someone else is getting over on you, for whatever concept happens to be floating around your head, you now have the opportunity to take whatever out on them with impunity. There was a video that's circulating right now. It's I believe a middle-aged white woman in California, and she's at a CVS, and she just calls these young ladies the N-word repeatedly. And in the middle of her tirade, she says, "If it weren't illegal to kill UNs, I would have done it."
Wow.
Now think about what the purge would mean for somebody like that. And we could argue about, maybe she's mentally unstable, or, she's whatever she happens to be. But imagine you give that type of agency to someone to where they can do whatever they want to someone else without the threat or without the possibility of being punished.
Yeah, any consequences at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, you can argue that the entire point of the purge is racist to begin with. I mean, the first purge, the fourth movie, basically shoves that down your throat. I think that it would empower people on such an individual level. But it'd be bigger than that. It'd be, I don't like women. I don't like my wife. I want out of my marriage, but I don't want to go through a divorce. I don't like people in wheelchairs or whatever. It'd be fucking nuts.
Yeah. You think about anything, and that's often one thing I wondered about with the Purge movies. What does the disabled community do to protect themselves? Because you don't see, at least from what I remember, I don't remember seeing anyone who had any physical disabilities being represented. They have people who have mental disabilities or mental illness being represented, and it's not always in a positive light. But you don't see anyone who has physical handicaps or physical disabilities being represented. And I kind of wonder, what would it look like for them? Because this is not, a situation that many, I would say, physically fit people would get through. Not even just the issue of being physically able, but there are people who are physically fit that aren't making it through the purge.
That's why I'm always with you during the purge. Yeah. No, but
told you, man. We go to the bunker. Watch those movies.
Legitimately, I would really like to see, because we know we're going to keep getting purge movies till the end of time. I would really like to see one that's about that very thing, like how somebody plans all year long because they have a physical disability. These different steps they're taking leading up to the purge, and then how it still goes wrong, and they have to find a way to survive. I think that would be a fascinating movie.
Well, that we mentioned that, I think it's an issue of people who are already thinking about how to survive day to day. The purge is no different day for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, the character who happens to be the black homeless veteran in the first movie, that's no different day. It might be more violent, but then again, just because crime is legal for 12 hours on one day doesn't mean that violence isn't taking place any other day of the year. It's just now that, the violence itself is expected to ramp up, and you're probably going to have more people that are going to participate, or at least the new founding fathers would want more people to participate. But then you also have to deal with, if you are homeless, if you happen to be unemployed, throughout the rest of the year, the purge doesn't matter. You just look at it as, oh shit, it's going to be tomorrow night. I better find some place that's going to be safe. Go to a green zone, or find some place where I can go where I don't have to worry about people purging.
I always think it's interesting when I hear people talk about the purge, just regular conversation with my friends. Everybody's always like, just get on a plane and leave. That's not privilege right there.
Right.
Being able to protect your house like Ethan Hawke does is very much privilege, to the point that his neighbors are pissed off that his is better than theirs. There's so many levels of just being able to plan ahead is privilege, and not everybody can do it. with that said, I would also really like to see a purge about like a homeless person, like you were just talking about, and how because they live on the streets, they know the streets better. They know places to dodge into because they're hiding from whatever else the rest of the year, or just, trying to get out of the weather, that sort of thing, and how these things play into how it helps them survive. I think that would be fascinating.
Something you vaguely mentioned as part of that, hiding for the weather and stuff.
Yeah.
The purge is always on a clear night.
Ooh.
At least in these movies. It's always a clear night, full lines of vision, lines of sight. It's not raining. There's not a complete thunderstorm, power outages. It's not like a lot of disaster movies where all the stuff goes wrong and then people are trying to survive. In the Purge movies, like the conditions are perfect and people are trying to survive, or at least go out and kill others as part of their ritual. But yeah, I mean, that would be a great concept to get into, as far as these people who have to survive on a daily basis, from finding their next meal to finding the next place where they can sleep safely. Because anything dealing with the homeless, when you're talking about infrastructure improvements, or you're talking about, I think in the Phoenix area and other cities where there are these movements to kill things like infrastructure bills and public transportation. Yep. That's all about attacking, poor people, working people, homeless people.
Shout out to everybody in Phoenix that voted against that shit and kept the light rail. I love you guys.
Yeah, I don't live in Phoenix anymore, and I'm glad to see that, the plan to kill it died.
Quite literally.
And along with one of the people who supported it.
I love how we both went there. Oh, man. So, let's jump into the actual films for a little bit. I know we've kind of been touching on them, but I just want to hit like some of the big stuff that we've talked about in panels before, or just things we noticed along the way. So, the initial purge, as you called it, I like that, with Ethan Hawke and his family. My favorite line, as everyone who's ever talked purge with me knows, is when Ethan Hawke is upset because it's not supposed to happen here. And that says so fucking much to me. It is just this thing they watch on TV. It's this enjoyable night where people go out and kill each other, and I get to sit at home and watch the fun. I mean, what a great thing, huh? That must be fantastic. I would never have that option, because even though I'm not racially targeted during the purge, I would definitely be economically targeted during the purge. I would also probably be out trying to get items that would help me the rest of the year. And so that in and of itself would make me a target, but I definitely can't afford to put amazing security systems on my house. So to me, it evens the playing field in a really bad way. But I also think it's interesting how someone like me would have to deal with this whole level of being more susceptible than usual. And how do you feel about that?
Well, when he said that line in the movie, and I was in the movie theater watching it, in my head I was thinking, fuck you. I mean, there's no other way that I really reacted to it. It wasn't a sympathetic, oh man, poor you. I literally...
Oh, of course not. I don't mean it that way either.
Was sitting there saying, I was like, fuck you, Ethan Hawke. Or whatever. And in fact, when he dies in the movie, I was like, that's what you fucking get for being so comfortable.
Spoiler.
Yeah. But no, it didn't... I was not sympathetic to him or his family. I mean, it aside from, I guess the general tone of the film of, they're trying to protect themselves, try to stay safe. But the whole idea that he and his wife had participated in the purge before. And when the kids, I think the son or the daughter the son asked him, Dad, why don't you and Mom go out and purge? And he says, oh, well, we don't need to. We don't need to anymore, or we don't have that urge anymore.
Yeah, we've gotten it out of us by turning old and being unable.
To me, I look at it as like, so there was a time when you purged and it was okay, but now you see how fucked up the purge is, and you're living in this house in this nice neighborhood, this really nice neighborhood, with all these protective measures in your home to make sure, one, you're living in a gated area, and then two, you have all this security around your house in case the danger comes from within the neighborhood. For me, when I saw him, or excuse me, when I heard him give that commentary, all I thought about was the beginning of the film where they have this montage of security camera footage where you just see people getting attacked, beaten, murdered on the streets. And it just made me think of, all the ways that we watch or I don't even want to say live vicariously, but we have this voyeuristic way of approaching violence within society. We'll see it on the news. Oh, there was a shooting here in this neighborhood. And as soon as you see it, depending on where you happen to live, if you're familiar with certain areas, you'll say, oh, well, shit, that's where the poor people live. Of course there's a lot of violence there. Or, oh, this is in the projects. Oh, it was probably gangbangers and it was this and this, that, and the other.
All right. So one of the things that I love about the initial Purge is the ending. Like you already brought up Ethan Hawke getting killed, and that's pretty great. I'll be honest. I love how when all the neighbors attack and they're basically they're going to take out Ethan Hawke and his wife because you guys have been screwing us over this whole time, so we're paying you back tonight. And then the veteran comes in and evens the score, so to speak. Everybody's sitting at the table. They're just waiting out the purge. And then that one bitch has to try to attack. And when the wife just knocks her face into the table, that is my favorite thing in the whole series. And she's like, no more violence. This isn't that fucking hard, I think that says so much about society and how I personally feel about it. I'm just what the fuck is wrong with everybody that you can't get that we don't have to be like this? Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I'll be honest, the writing is so... I don't want to say the writing of the whole film is lackluster, but the character development is so lackluster that I don't give a shit if anybody lives. I don't care if anyone dies. So that brings it down a lot for me. But I think that moment is still very powerful. I feel like if we really cared about the characters, it would be one of those defining horror moments, Well,
to get in the character development, I don't want to say that was by design because I wasn't there in the room, but I think a strength is that you don't have that character development. You don't have this need to feel sorry for everybody. Because even when Ethan Hawke dies, I saw it when the first movie came out, crowded theater, very diverse audience. And it was one of those good audiences where people were talking back to the screen. Yeah. It was white and black people were talking back to the screen, which was awesome. And this kid, he was 16, 17 years old. When Ethan Hawke gets killed, he's like, oh, fuck. Because, he kind of had this connection to him, but I didn't have that same connection with him. And maybe it's because, we watch so much of this stuff, we talk about it so much. But I think for me, the movies were more about self-reflection as opposed to seeing these people as I really need to relate to them so I can get their struggle, especially with the first film, because it's really about how are these people going to get out of this house or get out of this night?
Sure.
Because it was a new concept. It was an original film. It was, I think, what was the budget? $8-10 million,
yeah,
something
if
like that. I mean, it was, yeah. So it wasn't this idea of selling you on everybody who's in the movie. Because, there was no investment from an audience member to where you can look at it and say, I need to know that this family is going to come out safe. I need that reassurance. Yeah. But because I just saw it as more if this is a reflection of us. And is this really where we're heading as a society? Is this something that we would want to have? Is this even a good idea to throw out there? Because historically, in all honesty, it as far as the whole, it doesn't happen here. Historically, the purges have happened throughout U.S. history.
Oh, absolutely.
There's Forsyth, Georgia, Forsyth County. They had race riots at the beginning of the 20th century, around the first quarter of the 20th century. And in order to, I guess, quell the anger or hatred or animosity or whatever, the white people in the town kicked out all the black people, like forced them out. No compensation for land that was taken. I mean, it's kind of an American thing. No compensation for the land that was taken. People were kicked out, and it remained a whites only town up until like the 1990s. Even Oprah went there and tried to help desegregate the town, or should say, tried to help integrate the town because it wasn't even segregated. And here's where, kids, if you're paying attention, here's when you're going to get another book recommendation. There's a book called Blood at the Root that talks about, basically, I guess you could call it an American Purge, because it wasn't a race riot. It wasn't a riot. It was simply, we're going to enact violence against one section of the population in the hopes that they'll leave in order to save themselves. When we talk about how to save yourself during the purge, these people packed up what they could and left. So with a real life purge, similar to what the movie would be, I think that's probably the only way that you could survive, without a scratch, is to leave if you have the ability. So when people do say, get on a plane and leave, yeah, that's very easy to say if you have the money to do it. Or if the government doesn't shut down the airports in preparation for the purge, because I'm pretty sure the NFFA would probably do something like that. Inbound flights, yes. Outbound flights, no. So, we can still get all these purge tourists coming in, but nobody's getting out until the next day.
All right, that's my opening scene of my purge pitch. Everybody's on the plane. It's the last plane heading out, and then the flight's delayed. And then we find out that the pilot had a bunch of people killed, and now he's taking out all these white bitches. Yeah. So
the pilot is the homeless guy from the first Purge movie.
I got to tell you, I was really disappointed when the fourth one came out, the first Purge. I was like, where is Christopher Columbus? And he was nowhere to be found. What, too soon? All right.
Well, I mean, we are coming up on Columbus Day, so...
Ugh.
Personally, I'll be watching Chris Columbus movies, not Christopher Columbus.
I don't even know if I can do that anymore, but...
Mass murderer. I mean, you can watch a couple of Harry Potter movies.
True.
I mean, we didn't say direct. I mean, produce, direct, right, it works. But yeah, I mean, looking at that is fair for anybody who's going to sit here and say we're picking on Christopher Columbus. I'm not the one who went around murdering a bunch of indigenous people and bragging about it.
I'm just saying our country was literally founded on this.
Because if you read his diary, that's what he does. You have slave revolts, or, you have race riots, you have immigrant riots that take place between the different immigrant factions, immigrant groups, as well as nativist organizations. You have...
look at Wounded Knee. Look at anything Custer ever did, that whole era, we glorify the destruction of entire populations. We grew up playing cowboys and Indians, for fuck's sake, it's definitely a part of who our country is. So it's not really a far stretch to me that this could happen.
No, not at all. Because you've desensitized people with things like textbooks. And even the movies themselves that talk about these time periods, they talk about them poorly. They explain what took place poorly, but they definitely make an us versus them. The us would be those valiant soldiers or fighters that are going out west and fighting the quote unquote savages out west. Because we have to stop them from living their lives.
Take 1945. We had a couple purges within a few days of each other where we flew over to Japan and just wiped out entire fucking cities just to show the Russians that we could. So, America is the purge. We just sometimes take it on a road show. So the second purge comes along, Purge Anarchy, and now we move outside. Nothing is safe anymore. You're not in your precious little house with your security system and your family. You don't get to watch it on TV. And one of the things that I love immediately is that we go to shopkeepers who are trying to figure out how to keep their livelihood for the rest of the year alive during the purge, let alone keeping themselves and their families alive.
This movie pissed me off from the beginning. I mean, I liked the movie. It was just, at that first moment, I'm like, I hope you fucking die. I hope you die, and I hope you die. And it was the couple, I can't remember if they were married, just boyfriend and girlfriend, engaged, whatever. Purge is coming, and for some reason, we need to go to fucking Trader Joe's. like, you couldn't have done your shopping the day before. You got to do your shopping a couple of hours before the purge is supposed to start.
See, this is privilege in effect. Like, they didn't think about the purge coming at all. They're like, shit, that's tonight. It's like guys who buy all their shit on Christmas Eve.
Hey, man, you get some good sales during that time. Oh, speaking of purges, yeah, Black Friday, that's definitely a big purge that I would wager to say newsrooms look forward to Black Friday so they can report on the violence that's taking place on Black Friday nationwide. But anyway, that gets into when we start talking about some of our Christmas horror movies in a couple of months. But I'm not going to get beyond October yet because it's still spooky time. But yeah, it definitely gets into the whole privilege issue because if you're not concerned with the purge, you're not worried about timelines. You have this one kid that happens to be in the parking lot that's a little bit spooky or scares you, and you just think like, oh shit, we need to hurry up and get home because all the crazies are starting to come out. After that certain point, I'm just kind of like, I'm waiting for this couple to die. At least one of them needs to die. But what really got me was the family, the mother and the daughter that are living, the 3-generational family that's living in the apartment together. And the whole idea that they're in this small apartment and you see how the grandfather, he's not necessarily ashamed, but he understands that he can provide a better life for his family if he makes a deal with people who, want to purge, but don't go out of their way to purge like quote unquote normal people. They want the purge brought to them. We want to be able to kill somebody in our living room, with the plastic covered furniture and kill them and give their family some money. That experience gives us another glimpse of, what people are dealing with as far as, the working class, the working poor, what they happen to be dealing with in trying to find, as much as I hate to say this, find the brighter side of the purge to where the purge works for them as opposed to the purge acting upon them.
So you kind of sort of touched on this, but we get a straightforward slave auction in this movie. People are being rounded up, they're being brought there, and they're being sold to the rich for the purpose of purging. My first thought with this is, what a strange way to spend your night. Like, these rich people all go to this thing. Like, couldn't they Skype in and have them delivered?
Before you go any further, you got to remember, we just had a pedophile who offed himself after all this information was coming about what took place on his island that other rich people were going to. So maybe for the ultra wealthy, that's not that strange.
Well, I'm just saying, like, why would you risk purge night when you could be at home and order one online and it would be brought to you?
Well, they're rich, they're wealthy. I mean, it seems as though the more wealthy somebody is, the stranger their sexual fetishes are. And the stranger, the more wealthy you are, the stranger your interests start to become, to where I've got a lot of money. Let's see what the fuck I can do. I don't think it's that strange, though. I mean, it's strange for me. It's not something I could foresee myself participating in.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think the issue is that money. We talked about that privilege of, if you have the money that to get out of danger, as far as flight, boat, whatever, to get away from the danger. That speaks to the privilege that you have. But I think with a certain amount of money, just like youth, with a certain amount of money, there's this idea of invincibility. So we can go ahead and purge. We can go to this secure area that no one knows except for us, pay, these people thousands of dollars to go out and bring the people to us. So we don't even have to go out in this environment. Bring the people to us, and then we can turn it into a viewing party as well as an auction. But we can have the auction, as far as these people, and then turn it into a viewing party where we watch our friends or the winners of these auctions go and hunt human beings from the safety behind, this bulletproof glass. So, there's no stray bullets that we could get hit with. We get to enjoy it. We get to watch it as it takes place, make money off of this. I think there was even gambling that was involved. So, I mean, there are so many things that the Purge includes for this segment of the population. Well, the Leo character in the second movie,
Leo Barnes.
Yeah. The guy who has the tricked out Dodge Charger, and I guess it's bulletproof until the 50 cal shows up, or the minigun shows up. But he's got it all tricked out for the Purge. I mean, it looks like he's prepping for a zombie apocalypse. But Leo knows what he's going to, what he's doing, by being out in the Purge. He wants retribution for his son getting killed by a drunk driver. And it gives us a glimpse, unlike the first movie, of what people would be dealing with leading up to the Purge. That's the one opportunity you have to exact extrajudicial justice.
Well, they do it a couple times in this film because that one lady shoots her sister for fucking her husband, too.
Leo's revenge is based off of this guy killing his son by drunk driving, and then the charges are basically dropped. I mean, he's a free man. Which, you can understand. I mean, you could see Leo even probably going after him after the court case, or after he's, released from court. But he sits there and is like, no, I'm going to wait till Purge to do this. I'm in a lot of pain. I'm gonna get my retribution for him killing my son.
And we don't know how long it's been. Like, it could have been a week. Right. It could have been almost a year,
Doesn't matter to Leo.
Nope.
He needs to go find him. Even beyond that, you've got that aspect of revenge, but at least in this second movie, you see kind of how the government is wrapped up into this, to where they're sending people out to, basically clear blocks. And it's poor areas. It's not, the wealthy areas. It's not the well-to-do areas. It's, I guess, gentrification by genocide or by assassination, because they're going through these areas, killing whoever happens to be in those buildings. And because it happens to be working class and the working poor, you can only guess that this is just freeing up housing or freeing up these buildings to where, oh shit, there was all this stuff that went on in this building. Let's tear it down and put up some condos. So I imagine, real estate developers love the Purge because it gives them an opportunity.
Can you imagine being the construction crew that keeps building this shit, knowing that things just keep coming down?
Hey, job security, man. You got
True.
Money that's going to be coming in every year because the insurance companies are going to pay out, at least for those people that pay the premiums or could afford the premiums. The new buildings get constructed, or at least the property is bought dirt cheap. You might even be the one who buys it and then builds on it. And then, this becomes one of those areas that people aren't purging in because it's too nice.
It's weird how the Purge can move like that. One thing I really like in Purge Anarchy is how Leo can't go through with it. He's been waiting all this time, however long it's been, to go after Warren Grass. And when he finally gets his opportunity, he doesn't take it. It's like he understands that this isn't going to fix it. Like, his son's still going to be dead tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And now he's a monster that purposely killed somebody as well. And it's, I like that little bit of hope, if you will. You see it in the first one with the wife who doesn't want to participate anymore and wants everybody to fucking stop. Then you see it in this one with Leo not being able to follow through. And then he's lucky that he didn't, because that dude saves his life. And I could actually do without that in the film. Like, mm-hmm. I could do without be careful, you might need this guy later. Like, that's not a reason not to do it. Not that he knows that, but like, I feel like that message didn't need to be there necessarily. It's very convenient to the plot and it works everything out, but I don't know. It bothers me on a personal level. So then Leo gets to live, which brings us to Purge election year. And so now we have this very blatant, just jammed down our throat story of a female candidate against a very rich, very obviously conservative Republican candidate. I
don't know where we could see any similarities to that one.
Yeah, exactly. But so Leo in this somehow is now a security detail for her, right? Is it just for the Purge or is it all together?
I think it's all together because she kind of gives an indication that he's been with her for a while.
All right, cool. So then, like his past experience with whatever else he's done really plays in. He's able to he watches the video and sees that things are wrong and different things like that. And it really just kind of builds him into this Purge superhero, if you will, in many ways. Mm-hmm. And so it's very, very important that he didn't kill that guy in the second movie. That's what I'm trying to say. But how do you feel about how the Purge went from not subtle, the Purge was never subtle, but how it went from what it was to just slamming it in our face? Are you okay with that? Or does it bring the social commentary down for you at all?
It brings it down, but it's still one of those things where they could have been a little bit more subtle with certain aspects, crazy Nazi guy. I think you and I watched this in the theater together, and after he was on the screen for the third time, I'm like, I fucking get it. He's a Nazi. We get it. He's a racist piece of shit. We get it. He's got the Confederate flag. He's got this tattoo. He's got that tattoo. He's got SS. We get it. He's a fucking Nazi.
See, if it wasn't for the tattoos, if it was just the rest, I would think that it's fear building. It's these symbols that will instantly strike fear into anybody that you come into that night. The tattoos take it to another level because you're wearing those the other 364 days a year. So yeah, I'll agree with you. But
it's like if someone was wearing Klan sheets, or the hood and sheets and whatever, the Jim Crow cosplay. If they were wearing that and then they took off...
I can't believe you made me laugh at Jim Crow cosplay. Damn.
I love it. But if they took off the hood and underneath the hood was, a tattoo of a black guy lynched, I'd look at him like, we get it. He's a racist piece of shit. He's like, whatever. But anyway, that part for me, when they start bringing in all these neo-Nazis in their gear and stuff like that, and they're all, I guess, special forces guys, whatever the fuck they want to claim to be. When they all make their appearance, for me, I'm kind of like, yeah, I want all of them to die. Can we please hurry this up? And I love the fact that it was gang members at one point that killed 3 of them. Because they show up oh yeah, we found him, we tracked him down. And then you overhear one of the gang members, I'm assuming gang members because it was right after they met the Crips. So I'm assuming it's the same group. Where you just hear all the bullets being fired off and the one guy saying, "Fuck you, motherfucker." And then the racist Nazi skinhead who's in the helicopter just kind of lowers his head God damn it, they got us. For me, I'm kind of like, I want all of you guys dead. I want you done. I want to make sure all of you are dead by the time this movie is halfway through. One, because it's overkill, no pun intended, is overkill with all the imagery. And then two, they're not inventive characters. It just seems as though they were brought in to just be a visual representation for anybody who didn't get the Purge to begin with. Hey, look at these guys who are here. They're working with the new founding fathers. You need to look out for these guys. So if these guys are working for the new founding fathers, what does that say about the new founding fathers?
Oh, I'm sure there's very nice people on both sides of the Purge.
You beat me to it. As far as if you're willing to defend Nazis, you may as well be in their camp. Unless you happen to be a court-appointed attorney I don't want to hear you defending any of their positions. But yeah, but it didn't really bother me that much, other than, some people probably needed that visual because they might not have seen the first two movies. They might have needed that visual that's there, and the fact that you're seeing, and not to get too much into historiography and the epistemology and stuff like that, but what you see in this case is how white male supremacy does not want feminism of any sort to be in control. So you have the new founding fathers that don't want her, and they refer to her several times as like that woman. We can't let that woman get elected. That type of almost cliched type of voice that or attitude that they have towards her. They don't want her to be in charge because if she takes over, the entire system is going to be overturned.
That's one of the things I really like about her character being female. It plays into the obviousness of how we need a different voice in charge. Mm-hmm. It could have been a black man, it could have been a gay man, it could have been anything, but it's just a different voice than what we've been hearing. It's not an old white guy. It's not the typical run-of-the-mill guy. I like that they went with that choice. I think it's way stronger and just works so well. And it gives everyone who's against it that nice excuse of, no, we don't. It's not that we want, this fucking everything to stop. It's that she can't handle it. She wants to overturn it. And this is working really well. It's all about this one aspect of the purge. It has nothing at all to do with what she'd do the rest of the time. Like, she won't upset every single aspect of everything that we've worked to keep control of. Let's focus on the purge, I really, really like how they did that. One thing that I don't want to say bothered me about this film, but one thing that really, really got to me was just watching it play out in real time in daily life. Hearing people that I used to respect or that I thought were better than they are say the exact same shit that everyone in this movie says really fucked with me on a high level. And as somebody who's been my Facebook friend forever, I'm sure you noticed my rants about such things, but it was really, it's such a good moment to me of how horror can pick this thing and put it in your brain. And then when you see things in real life, it becomes a giant fucking red flag for you.
Yeah. It's like all those Warner Brothers cartoons where you see that big flashing sign that says, watch out.
Yeah. And all I could think when I heard people say, oh, that woman can't be president, or Hillary's a bitch, or whatever else, I was like, none of you give a shit that Hillary Clinton is a bitch. To be a powerful woman who can put up with everything she put up with, and I'm not even a Hillary fan, but you have to be a bitch to be in that position. I don't mean that she's actually a bitch, but I mean the definition that they're using. If she came in and was a happy-go-lucky person, she's not going to survive 5 seconds. So using that against her is ridiculous to me because that's what made her so strong to get to where she was. And it's the same with, is it Charlie Rose? Is that her name in the film?
Yes.
Everything she does, she's never bitchy in the movie. She's in control and she has power and she has a plan and she's moving forward and trying to make the country better. And the response is, what a bitch.
Right.
And watching that play out in real time just fucked with my head so bad.
But there's this great discussion that takes place between Abigail Adams and her husband, John Adams, the second president of the United States, first vice president, where she's telling him repeatedly in letters, you need to include us in this. You need to do this for women. You need to do this. And he calls her, which would be the 18th century equivalent of bitchy. He calls her saucy. you need to stop being so saucy. She is just basically asserting her place and saying, like, look, we had this revolution. We got rid of the monarchy, got rid of parliament. We need to have a say too. Don't forget about the ladies is one of the quotes that she gets credit for from those letters. And he tells her in 21st century or 20th century in lingo, why do you have to be such a bitch?
Can you imagine if he would have listened?
I know. And just reading those letters between those two, it's great to see how composed she was and how composed he wasn't, because she doesn't lash out with any insults or, hold up a pinky to demean his manhood or anything like that. It's simply like, look, you're talking about these rights. You're using Enlightenment thought. You got all these great plans. Don't forget about the ladies. And then you could probably talk about abolition and all these other things that are there. But it's great that he is the one who turns into name calling. And that's what you see every time, at least a good majority of the time, that women start to assert themselves. You have suffragettes who get beaten in the streets because they want the right to vote. And they're told that they're not, assuming their place as women. I mean, there's so much that goes on in this movie that you can talk about historically, that wouldn't just be limited to the 2016 election. That reaction that those men give to her candidacy in the movie, it does play out the same way during the election. It played out the same way in 2008 when people were making comments about her. It played out in 2012 when Hillary wasn't even on the ballot. But you're going to see it a lot more because I think we still have 4 or 5 women that are running for office for the on the Democratic ticket, or at least for the Democratic ticket. And you kind of see how that's playing out now, where people are commenting about, one candidate's appearance or another candidate's voice, or
isn't it amazing that we never give a shit about how the male candidates look?
I haven't heard one word about Bernie's hair, but I've heard enough about Senator Harris and Senator Warren's hair and what they were wearing.
And I'm pretty sure that bad hair does not stop you from being president of the United States.
You read my mind. But
somebody bring back powdered wigs fast. Jesus.
Something needs to be done.
So at the end of the film, she wins. She becomes president. Her first act is exactly what she said it would be. And she puts an end to the purge with an executive order. You
mean somebody using an executive order for the positive good?
Yeah, something like that. And what do you think happens at that point? I think that there would be riots if this really happened. I think there would be a backlash.
Well, there are people that don't like change. I mean, or at least they don't like change that is going to make them uncomfortable. As far as, I hate to call a female president drastic change, but for some people, that's drastic change. I just look at it as, the more qualified person probably won, which they did last time.
I just look at it as, hey, the rich are still in charge.
I mean, there's that portion of it, because you see how the NFFA still wield power, even though they don't have the executive. Because I think the wrong message is sent with the film and this idea that the purge ends. She calls an end to the purge through executive order or executive action. But I'm sure the NFFA still has a lot of senators, has a lot of representatives that are still in their camp, because it's not just a one branch party. They're not looking at the executive and saying, well, as long as we got this, we're good. I'm sure, and probably Purge 4, it's the Supreme Court that has struck down her executive action and is saying that we didn't allow Americans to have a say. There's so many things that are going there. I think the way they ended is too abrupt, but they need to have it as an abrupt ending to show how people react, or at least people in the public are reacting. And some of that is probably done by the NFFA that's, goading people into, purging with all types of paranoia, because it's not like we haven't had someone in elected office who've made comments about if I don't win re-election, there'll be social unrest.
What I do find interesting is that a woman put an end to the purge, supposedly, and a woman is the reason that the purge began.
Oh, that's a good segue.
That's right. We're merging into the first purge, which is the fourth movie, because we're using Yoda rules. All right, so Dr. Updale comes up with the idea of the purge, basically how it will be cathartic and get it out of you if you commit crimes this one night. And I mean, she's way off base, obviously. But do you think that this is just a person who had a crazy idea and wrote a paper and it got completely out of hand? So she comes in with her idea and then men take over and everything goes to hell. You want to start us off and talk about the first purge and the obvious targeting of certain citizens?
Well, yeah, because this movie starts with the interview process of people in Staten Island. And right at the beginning, you know who they're going after. And it's not, the middle class or upper class neighborhoods or the suburbs or anything like that. They're looking for a contained area of working poor, as well as the destitute, drug addicts, the elderly, the disabled. So at least with the beginning of this film, they're being a lot more honest to the origin of what the purge is. And obviously they had to do that because it's called the first purge and it's supposed to be the first purge that takes place. So in this movie, it was interesting to me that they started out that way and they turned it in this thing of, hey, we need to do an experiment. We're going to pay you X amount of dollars to participate. And people are not as suspicious about it as they should be, despite, the rally that's going on outside of the trailers or wherever they're doing the interviews. People aren't asking too many questions. It's they're being quickly sold on the idea and they're accepting of it. Like, oh man, I gotta let some of this rage out. I gotta let some of this anger out. I need to do this. I need to do that. Oh, and you're going to pay me. Great.
I think the paying is such a huge thing. Like, it is so American. So the entire point is they're doing this because they don't want to afford healthcare and everything else for people. Mm-hmm. So they're getting rid of people. And then they're blowing money by supposedly paying people, even though I don't think that's probably really happening. But they blow like money on crazy shit, like glowing contacts. Mm-hmm. and they do multiple colors,
GPS
there's so many obvious nods to, there's so many obvious nods to none of this is true. And I like that a lot. The last time you and I sat down and kind of talked about this, I was bothered by that. And the more I've thought about it, the more I think it's a very, very great thing to do because it just reflects the shit out of what our country does. We often, preach one thing and then blow millions of dollars on the direct opposite. And I think that just fits in so fucking well. And I think it's great. But I also really like how they managed to build that in two ways. They do it, one, because it's creepy looking and you're watching a horror film, know? But when the main character has to cover his eyes because he realizes people can see his contacts, I love that so fucking much. And so it works on a hunting level as well because you're easier to find. But what do you think of, clearly we've already had Big Daddy in Anarchy. And in this one, they just straight out say, hey, the people aren't killing each other like we thought they would. Let's dump a whole bunch of killers into this to make this go faster. And I know you're going to want to talk about what they're doing beforehand, but what do you think of how they blatantly explained this? And do you think that's what our country would do if we went to this?
What do you mean, if we went to this, James?
I'm thinking, I don't know, maybe the middle of November 2020.
Oh, God, don't say that. No, I say that because it's one of those things of, with rallies, protest. We're just 2 years removed from Charlottesville, so there are people who are kind of participating by purge rules because they cover their faces, banding together with whatever other far right wing groups that they belong to, and fighting on streets, marching, in protest of a greater contextualization of history and the fact that there are monuments to people who committed treason against the United States in support of the institution of slavery. Spoiler alert: slavery was the cause of the Civil War.
What?
I know. It wasn't because the North invaded the South.
That's not what I've heard.
I don't know why. But in protest of that, there's all types of violence that's taken place. There's extrajudicial police shootings, and not just race-based ones. I mean, there's an uptick in them. Violence at sporting events. There's a lot of stuff that's going on. School shootings. All the stuff that's already taken place. So it's not necessarily an issue of the purge exists and there's no impunity for it. It's almost like people don't care about the punishment that could come from whatever their actions are that they commit. Whether that's running down a crowd of people in a college town, or if that's going into a school, a concert, a movie theater, wherever, and just killing people at random. So and that's why I'm saying, like, how can we argue that we don't already have a purge? Not a purge like the film, but at least a purge to where people are not being held accountable in the way that we would like people to be held accountable.
I would absolutely agree with that. I meant in the straightforward rules-based system where level 10 politicians are perfectly safe, even though they're the ones who make the purge happen.
Well, they're already safe. That's one of those things that for the purge did make sense to me, because politicians are already, of all numbers of levels, are already protected. All you're saying is, we're going to allow you to commit crimes, but remember, you can't go after these guys. You couldn't go after them on a normal basis because of their security details, Secret Service, military protection, police protection, all those types of things. But why would the purge make those people available to be pursued? Except for in purge election year, when it was by design, it was to go after one person. Or we're assuming it was one person.
Is she supposed to be protected?
She was.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah, she had her security detail, which was Leo. And
no, I mean, is she supposed to be immune from the purge?
Oh yeah, she was a senator, so she would have been protected. And I think that was the big issue that the NFFA found with, we can quickly solve this problem. We can get her purged, so we'll just remove the protections. And what we'll do is we'll hide out in this church and perform our ceremony because no one's going to attack us because we're the guys who are running this. But yeah, to get back into the first purge, I would never say it wouldn't happen or it couldn't happen, because looking at U.S. history, there are a lot of things that people saw happening at that time that they all said this couldn't possibly happen. There's no way that this could have been allowed or is going to take place here, to bring up that Ethan Hawke quote. But has been proven that it was going to happen, and it did happen to them.
Well, I mean, even if you look at what's been happening at the border with children in cages and all that kind of shit, that's purging on a different level, We're very clearly targeting certain individuals. We're making sure that they don't have a life that everyone else does. We might not be straight genociding everybody, but I would absolutely argue that we're still destroying lives. So how is that any different?
Kids from family members, and then you're not keeping track of whose children they are, and then in some cases turning them over to organizations to adopt the kids out, you're creating a cultural destruction at that point, because then you're getting rid of the connection they have with their family. So if you were going to, deport them or whatever your plans were, now you've created a much bigger problem, because now you've cut that connection, you severed those ties between that child and their family and that child and their country, and created any number of lasting problems for that kid as well as their family.
Absolutely.
Because it would take a little bit more to examine that whole idea of other stuff that is possible. But what I liked about this film was they talked about, or just they demonstrated at the beginning of the film, probably within the first 30, 40 minutes of the film, what the purge would probably look like. I mean, aside from invoking members of Kekistan and Klansmen and neo-Nazis and whatever other types of white supremacists you could find, you could round up. They show what people would probably be doing during a purge, what you and I would probably be doing in a purge if we weren't taking it seriously. Oh, there's going to be, we're free to commit whatever crimes we want. Oh shit, I'm going to break into a store. Oh, I'm going to break into an ATM. You know what? I'm going
to throw a fucking party and have the best drugs.
High. Or it's kind of that one moment where I'm watching, like, something bad's about to happen, where that couple was having sex on top of a car. And then everybody in the car is looking one way, and then a car comes and hits them from another direction. But there's so many, and that's when it really pops off. But you've got all these things that people look at and say, this is what I would do in this situation. This is one of those movies where it was very honest as to what people would do. I'm going to get drunk. I'm going to go ahead and, have sex in public, get high, steal cable, whatever, hack into NORAD, whatever you're going to do. Because I found out here from...
Now I'll know where Santa is.
Exactly. Track him all the time. I mean, just think about how all the annoying little rules that we have that we'd possibly exploit during a purge. And this movie, as you brought up that quote from the film, they're not killing each other. They're not. We don't have any violence that's taking place, and you have these people in a watch room that are conducting an experiment and saying, like, nothing's happening. They're not doing anything, and they're getting this video footage of parties. They're getting this video footage of, somebody smoking a joint, somebody doing cocaine. Like all these things that. They're basically saying, great, I can do this without getting in trouble now. But then you have to ramp it up in a murder, because the purge is not about this whole idea of personal and individual freedom and bodily autonomy. It's about, we have too many of you people we don't deem as being worthy.
One of my favorite characters is Dimitri, the drug lord. Mm-hmm. And there's that powerful speech where the girl looks at him and she's like, what are you talking about? You destroy this community 364 days a year. And his reaction is so interesting to me. How did that hit you when he reacts the way he does? Because he doesn't view himself doing what they're doing.
Well, he doesn't see himself as, I guess, a parasite on the community, which is what he is. And I hate that they have this redemption of him. I mean, it's great that he was there to save everybody, but it was one of those things where it didn't make sense to me as far as everybody to kind of rally around like, yeah, Dimitri, you're the big king on the block, when he defeats all the bigots and that have been trying to destroy this building. But for me, initially I looked at it as, I hope they don't make the drug dealer the good guy in this movie. And then 2, if they do, I want there to be this moment where he kind of, there's this moment of introspection, this moment where he internalizes and says, oh, fuck, I've been doing this to this community for years. And kind of realizing that he's one of the problems.
Yeah, I think it would be a lot stronger if he came to that realization instead of having somebody spell it out for him.
That, and all of a sudden he turns into a special forces, like SEAL Team 6 guy as soon as like his entire crew gets wiped out. I'm going to go in here into this building and destroy all of these racist folks that are showing up to destroy this project. But no, for me, it was one of those things where I couldn't, kind of like I didn't sympathize with Ethan Hawke. I didn't sympathize with this character either. And I almost, well, I shouldn't say almost, I was looking to the point where he was probably going to die. I was thinking, he's going to have to die because that's the only redemption this guy can have. We can't let him live. He has to die, like, saving people, and that's kind of like his payback to the community for fucking it up. And I kind of question, like, Purge Day +1, is he sitting there thinking, like, shit, I still have a lot of cocaine to sell?
Yeah, I'd like to know how long it took him to go back to being Dimitri, you know? Because I have no doubt that he continues his ways. But that in and of itself reflects a lot of society and how we care about things for a few minutes. But once it affects me and my business, then it's not as important, you know? All right, let's talk about my favorite scene in the first Purge before we wrap this up. Can I just say how much I love the guy with the gas mask with the little baby face on it when he literally grabs her by the pussy. I feel like that was a direct shot at somebody, but I just can't put my finger on it. What I do wish, instead of the baby face, I just wish he had little hands. If he had little hands, that would have just made my day.
See, in the director's cut or like a newer version, they'll probably CGI smaller hands on that guy. But yeah, I mean, just kind of like you get beaten over the head with some of the stuff in the Purge movies or the earlier Purge movies. Anarchy, not so much as Election Year. But in this movie, you know, it's really blatant as far as what's going on, who's involved, who's going to be the victims, who's going to be taken advantage of. Yeah, that's who they're talking about. They're talking about a certain person. And then Mia's character kind of yells at him or kicks him off of her and then says, "You pussy grabbing motherfucker." Which is a great line.
Right.
And it's this idea of, one, she's asserting her power in that situation to resist, you know, his sexual assault of her body. Yep. But then also it's that wink, wink, nudge, nudge to the audience of, guess who this guy is? This is who we're pointing out.
Well, and I think it's extra great because she embodies something that women are so terrified of with good fucking reason. And it just happens when she least expects it. It's in a place where you wouldn't even be thinking in those terms. And to me, that just hits so hardcore because that's how it fucking happens. And I'm not just talking about pussy grabbing. I'm talking about all sexual assault, obviously.
And the sad thing is, I mean, well, two sad things. One, we're two guys talking about, you know, a woman's perspective.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what
I don't pretend to know what that's
would
like.
think of that situation. But two, the way, you know, at least women can be victimized within a society, and then they become further victimized, and not victimized by sexual assault or sexual violence, but then also victimized by somehow they have to own the sexual victimization. Somehow they're responsible for what happened to them. It doesn't matter what the circumstances are. There always becomes this moment where somebody says, "Well, what were you doing there by yourself?" As opposed to,
you shouldn't have been out in the purge.
Yeah. How about he should have never grabbed her? He should have never, you know, assaulted her. He should have never done this. As opposed to, you know, the societal jumping on women and saying, like, look, it's something that you're wearing. And what Mia's character has, at least as that opportunity to address that, how women can become attacked without warning in a place that they're not expecting that type of attack. And she may have been expecting anything except for that. I'm going to go out here. I might get shot at. Somebody might stab me. Somebody might beat me up. Somebody might do all these things. Meanwhile, what happens is a guy grabs her crotch. You know, he violates her sexually.
So I don't really know how to phrase this, so everybody just stick with me on this and don't attack me too hard online. But I think it's interesting how they played it in an almost humorous way, because I think it makes it stronger and makes it stick with you. I think if it had been 100% terror, that we wouldn't be talking about it right now. I think the fact that he's wearing what he's wearing and the fact that she says, "You pussy grabbing motherfucker," like, we kind of giggle uncomfortably in the moment, but that's what keeps it alive to me and makes us think about it. And I think that's really powerful and amazing. Purge 5 is coming at us in 2020. The Purge television show has just been renewed. Do you think this is a reflection of fear in America and what is happening? Or do you think people are really that invested in this franchise?
I think it's a little bit of both, but I think it's more people are invested in the franchise to see what's coming next.
So I read a little bit about Purge 5 and where they're going. And it basically seems like
it's the homeless.
No, it's going to take place during her presidency. So I think that we're going to get the backlash from eliminating the Purge. And clearly we're not having a Purge movie without a Purge, so it's still going to happen.
Well, I think that's what it's going to come down to is now you're talking about what the world looks like. I think it's going to be a purge, but it's not going to be an official purge.
And I think that says a lot about America, and that we'll be definitely doing an episode on that in July of next year.
Well, I'll be in my bunker, so I don't know what to tell you.
We can record in a bunker. I mean, you have to be with me. It's the only way I keep surviving. They have said that this is definitely the last one, and James DeMonaco wants to completely wrap things up and answer some questions, which almost never happens in horror, so I'll believe that when I see it. What I do know is that totally all 4 movies have had a budget of $35 million. And total. Yeah, the first one was $3 million, and then it went up a little from there each time. So totally $35 million to make these 4 films. And they've grossed over $450 million. So, I mean, to me, you're getting a Purge 5 either way, but I'm really hoping he actually does wrap it up. I mean, we still have so much you could do if you wanted to go outside of that. You know, we can see what else is going on during purges that we've already watched. You know, I mean, there's a million ways to go with it. So am I convinced this will be the last one? Absolutely not. But I would like more closure than a simple, I'm going to turn it over and the world will be different, you know? So we'll see.
No, it's just America's going to be a smoking crater probably by the end of Purge 5.
All weapons are legal. And then some crazy ass celebrity from Home Alone 2 will launch. All right, so I suppose.
Yeah, you know what's crazy is if we're talking about the Purge, we got to think about at least all these other ways, or at least all these other people that probably would have made it through the Purge. Like, wouldn't Kevin McAllister make it through the Purge? Because he would just trick out his house.
Absolutely.
And you know, do all types of shit. But
Purge alone.
If you were to purge, because this will be my question.
Okay.
If you were to purge, and I'm not talking about, I'm going to go out there and I definitely don't want you to incriminate yourself. If you were to purge, what crime would you actually commit that requires you to leave your house?
Well, I think I would definitely get a new car. It would be something I could afford the insurance and the registration on, because I'm still going to have to take care of that during the rest of the year. And I would probably, let's see. Let's say there's something I've always wanted to get into that isn't open to the public. I would use that day to do it.
I'm just trying to think of anything that won't incriminate me. Maybe I would go to a construction site and take one of those bulldozers.
Ooh.
And then just, I don't know, just have this nice spree where I just run stuff over. Or Nah, that'll probably be it. Just get a bulldozer and I just start knocking stuff down. Stuff that I can't, stuff I don't want to look at for the other 364 days out of the year.
Nice. Just start destroying shit. So we're going to wrap this up because we're almost out of time. And joining us next week will be horror author John F.D. Taff. I don't want to give away his choice of films to talk about just yet, but I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. So until next week, I am James Sabata.
And I'm Don Guillory.
And we survived the Purge episode.